Hi folks, it's John Wilson here. So today we're going to be looking at a question that was asked by one of our subscribers, Adam, whose business partner is wondering what is the catch with lease options. They seem a bit too good to be true. I know exactly how Adam's business partner feels. That's exactly how I felt when I first encountered lease options. But what I found is that actually on the contrary, they're actually a lot more secure and less risky than traditional buy-to-let. And I'm just going to tell you a bit about why that is the case. So I'm just going to switch over to a presentation here, otherwise I'll forget what I'm talking about. So here we go. Okay, so the first possible risk that you might be thinking of is rent. What happens if the tenant or tenant buyer, in the case of a lease option, fails to pay the rent or the monthly payment? So what happens with a buy-to-let? Obviously, if you've got a mortgage, then the tenant doesn't pay, then you've got to find funds to pay the mortgage yourself, otherwise you'll end up ruining your credit rating and possibly getting the place repossessed. What happens when you have a lease option? If you've taken an option on someone else's property and you're selling it on to a tenant buyer, then similar sort of situation, except it's someone else's mortgage that doesn't get paid. Now, obviously, you have agreed to make the payments on that mortgage, so you're going to want to make sure that they get paid. Just like a buy-to-let, you've done your due diligence beforehand, and that you know that you've got a decent investment there, so you don't want to let it go. Now, which is more likely is my next question. Now, I would say that with a lease option, it is less likely that your tenant buyer is not going to pay the rent. Why is that? Well, the one big reason is that they have usually put down a large chunk of cash up front as a deposit towards the purchase of this property. Often, it's 2 or 3% or and possibly more of the purchase price of that property. They know that if they don't pay their rent, if they don't keep up on the payments, they will risk losing that upfront payment. So if it's just a renter in a buy-to-let, then there's a lot less at stake there. Also, with a lease option, you've got your tenant buyer has a buyer mindset, so they're a whole different type of prospect than your normal renter. Now, we've said that it's more unlikely to happen. In the unlikely event that it does happen, then what would you do? Your legal paperwork will say that you get the property back. You're able to get the tenant has to leave if they don't pay their rent, their monthly payments. So what can you do? You can just get another tenant buyer in there. When you've done your original marketing, you will have had a bunch of leads of people looking to buy that property. You just go back to your initial list, find somebody who was desperate to get it the first time but just missed out, and get them into the property. What does that mean? That means another down payment, and it means you've got somebody who's going to pay the rent again. So if they don't pay the rent and they have to leave, then it's not the end of the world. Okay, so risk number 2. This is it's always a risk with buy-to-let. In the case of buy-to-let, what happens? You're the owner. You have to pay for any repairs. It says so in the lease. Now, with lease options, it's obviously an option to buy the property running alongside a standard tenancy agreement. Now, the tenancy agreement, again, has to say that the landlords or the person who's renting the property out, that's yourself, the investor, has to pay for repairs. Now, but what you find in practice is that, again, because the tenant buyer has a buyer mindset, they are not going to be phoning you about a leaky tap. They will do most repairs themselves. If, for example, the property was taken on and the boiler broke down within a few weeks of them going in there, you'd maybe want to do the right thing and get that fixed, but in general you'll find you will not get calls from people on lease options. Installment contracts, obviously another sort of variation on a lease option, often known as delayed completions or long stop completions. With installment contracts, it's totally different again. It's more similar to just a normal purchase, and there's no option. They're bound to buy the property, and in that case there is no tenancy agreement, in which case the tenant buyer pays for all repairs no matter what. It's like they had bought the property themselves, so you're completely covered there. So again, more risk with a buy-to-let, I would say, on that. The other big risk, and certainly for anyone who has more than a couple buy-to-lets and doesn't have fixed rate mortgages, the risk of interest rates going up is a big one, and let's face it, they can't go down that much further at the moment. So obviously with a buy-to-let, interest rates go up, your payments go up, you have to pay the payments or you get repossessed. With a lease option, there is less risk of this, because with a lease option you are generally getting upwards of 20% more than you would on a buy-to-let in your monthly payment. So that means that there's more room there for the interest rates to move up and for your payments to move up, so the risk is less. In an installment contract, most investors will write into the contract that the payments rise and fall in line with interest rates. So if interest rates go up, then the payment will also go up. So again, you're completely insulated from any risk on the interest rate side. And for that very reason, that is why I have enough buy-to-lets. I'm not going to get any more. For that very reason, I feel I'm too exposed to interest rates rising, and for that reason I'm only going with installment contracts now, or delayed completions, because I know that I can build in any interest rate rises, build that into my risk reversal there. So that's another big risk, which is not really present with installment contracts and lease options. Now, other risks. At the end of the day, you're a property investor, for goodness sake. If you don't want risks, then put your money in a bank. You know, there are risks with everything, but you're a property investor. You're no doubt a bit of a risk taker, and there's obviously ways of managing those risks with proper due diligence and using the right tools. Finally, solicitors, that's what they're there for. They do the legal documents to deal with any other unforeseen risks that might come up, like people dying or going bankrupt and things like that. And then just finally, my mentor, as always, Rick Otten. He's the guy that I learned all my creative property stuff from, and if you want to find out more about Rick, then just click the link under this video. See you next time.